Hello there. Greetings. You know, I spend a whole lot of time thinking about abstruse topics. Of course, we've all seen endless science fiction nonsense where a binary machine attains to sentience, right? Quantum computers. I love that word quantum because it doesn't actually refer to anything. Nothing in nature or in field theory can be pointed to and say, that's quantum. By the way, that's something you should test and ask your teacher. Ask them, define a field, which they'll never be able to do. Ask them, define energy, which they'll never, ever be able to do. And say, Mr. Teacher, one really simple question, because the simple questions are the ones that confuse them the most. Is there anything you could point to objectively in nature, like whatever this is? Anything in nature, and it has to be demonstrable, yes? Even a field which is not objectively demonstrable. Because a field is an ether perturbation modality. Say, that is quantum or part of quantum, and there is no such thing. This is, of course, the reason why Tesla, Faraday, Steinmetz, Heaviside, James Clerk Maxwell, all the greatest brilliant minds of field theory that the Earth has ever seen didn't employ the word quantum for their designs because it doesn't refer to anything. Yeah. And anyway, getting off that topic, I've actually spent a lot of time thinking about artificial intelligence, and of course, you've all seen these movies like Transcendence and the Arthur C. Clarke movie where HAL 9000 is like a sentient life form and all this other stuff. And you know, there are these binary machines that actually process super enormous amounts of information. But this is nothing other than a ultra complex calculator. We're talking about moving ones and zeros around, binary. Sentience is not possible, nor is artificial intelligence possible by or through this means at all. We're never going to see artificial intelligence. And by artificial, that's rather ridiculous. We say artificial is, the intelligence that a mother and a father make in creating a baby. Artificial intelligence because, well, we made it. It's like, yeah, but it's natural. And by intelligence, we're talking about actual consciousness. I know about the Turing test and Alan Turing. I know that and his ideas on the computer, so on and so forth. I do know about Alan Turing. But binary machines that actually move and process, ones and zeros, there's never going to be conscience or sentience via this means. By the way, consciousness, from the perspective of metaphysics, which is also, too, scientifically undeniable, is the consubstantiality of two things, matter, yes, and spirit. Now, spontaneous manifestation of spirit, or what we call consciousness, which, of course, is the mirage of actual spirit, is possible. Yes, we're not talking about bringing inanimate or dead matter back to life like in Frankenstein. But the way that artificial intelligence would be possible is by one means, and it could manifest itself in one of several different ways, but it's never going to occur through, and I know, by the way, how a quantum computer works. Now, I could call my microwave a quantum heating device, and I could call my camera a quantum image processor, but this does not reify the word quantum. That's why I actually had to point out that there is nothing in nature that you can go, that's quantum. No, that's quantum. It's a part of quantum. By the way, you should ask that to a scientist in college or your teacher, your science teacher. Excuse me, Mr. Teacher, can you point to anything in nature we can call quantum? And the answer is no. There is not one single thing anybody could call quantum. Yeah, we could reify that word and say it's quantum interaction, it's a quantum wave particle duality. It's too complex for you to understand. And that's how, of course, modern science uses it. So we have to dismiss this word quantum. We're actually talking about reality here, not science fictions, and not the mental flatulence of those that have reified, this phantasm. By the way, das Lichtquant, or quantum, refers to mathematics, to actually make definitive and measurable, countable, actually, because today's scientists are not scientists, actually. In Aristotelian and Platonic sense, what they are mathematicians. They don't believe in anything if you can't count it, because that is the religion of a mathematician. If I can't count it, what good is it to me? I'm a mathematician. That's what today's scientists are, by the way. Anyway, getting back to artificial intelligence, the way in which it would be possible The same way the human body works, which I don't know if you know this or not, it's kind of blatantly obvious that the vast majority of the human body is nothing other than water and dust, right? Water is the only thing that makes life possible. We don't have to talk about life, but when we say artificial intelligence, this is really a misnomer. Let's just say consciousness. Okay? Instead of saying artificial, if it is real consciousness, it cannot be artificial. It can be a construct of human beings that have built a device containing certain components, one of which has to be hypernatural. Of course, everything that anything is made out of is natural, even if it's artificial, like plastics and other things that don't occur in nature. You know, they're still composed of natural components, even if they're highly complex molecules that do not occur in nature. It is still a natural construct. And human beings being natural, through our consciousness and intelligence, whatever level that intelligence may be, we have constructed things that help us deal with life, like computers and cars and cameras and all the rest of it. So artificial intelligence is a misnomer. Let's say what artificial, if it were real, that thing that we denote as artificial intelligence, which would be a working construct of genuine consciousness, would not be artificial at all. It would just be consciousness. Yes? The processing of ones and zeros is in no way intelligence at all. That is nothing other than a super, super complex calculator. Yeah? That's all it is. So let's dismiss artificial intelligence and call what it is. A construct that one or more human beings were to build that would have self-synthesis of information that was not input into it. This would be consciousness. It would be able to problem solve. It would have spontaneous cogitation of things that were not programmed into it. And how would that be possible? It'd be possible the exact same way as a human would be. And we're not talking about Frankenstein here, you know, building something with arms and legs. Of course, the true consciousness that were to be built that would be a construct of human beings rather than a baby or a child or some other sort of life form. You know, we could attach arms and legs to it so that it can move around and interact with people. Just the actual core matrix of what the consciousness would be itself. And the construct wouldn't require one thing, and it's the one thing that makes consciousness possible in all life. Yeah, and that, of course, is water. The only reason consciousness exists in human beings is due to water. Water is the only holographic molecule. Water is the only molecule containing the Pythagorean perfection of harmonic incommensurability. You know, they see this little triangle that's upside down on the back of my hand here? It's the 115 Pythagorean. That's the only geometry in the whole universe that has perfect holographic incommensurability. It's the only thing in nature that has perfect geometric golden section. And by golden section, we're talking about self-similarity. Self-similarity, the one is the phi is to 1, which, by the way, is a statement of math. Yet when you tell that to a mathematician, they don't actually, do you know that 1 is to phi is to 1? It's like, yes, I know this, but why is that important? It's like, oh, it just passes right over their head. Zoom! Is this specific geometry, the 115 Pythagorean incommensurable. By the way, this same triangle in triplicate, when you actually superimpose it over top of itself, is the Pythagorean pentagram. Go figure, yeah? Well, interesting enough, the one thing that makes the manifestation of consciousness possible, yes, is the exact same geometry, which is the water molecule. Right there. Perfect harmonic Pythagorean perfection and incommensurability. The only perfect geometry in the entire universe. The only perfect incommensurable geometry in the entire universe. The only self-similarity throughout, actually if you subdivide, if I take the chalk here and actually do an incommensurable cut right here, what we have is a smaller triangle over here, which has the perfect proportionality of 1 to phi, and then down here we actually have perfect proportionality of 1, it's hard to write on this, there we go, phi to 1, whereas the base is phi, but with the incommensurable cut, it's also 1 to phi, and then 1 over phi to the power of negative 2 is equal to 1, even though it's 1 over, you know, you go on and make like a dozen videos into this. Just talking about this, actually well over a dozen. Anyway, getting back to so-called artificial intelligence, which we have to dismiss, we're actually talking about genuine consciousness. Yes? People like to use the word intelligence but the ability to process enormous amounts of information is not intelligence. That's number crunching and information crunching. When you plug in algorithms, however, we're able to make statistical determinations. So if you actually plug in enough raw information and have that pass through a filter of a specific algorithm, then you could come up with, and this is done by stockbrokers and whatnot, you're able to make predictions about tomorrow that sometimes are quite accurate. And people use these algorithms to determine the near future and actually see what's going on, because the information is just too much of an overload. But that's what a supercomputer, by the way, does, is enormous amounts of information crunching. But that's not intelligence, and it is absolutely not consciousness. So actually, how would we have a human-built construct of consciousness? Well, the water would have to be a saline, I don't know what the exact percentage of like a distilled water, there's actually 3 other alternatives other than sodium chloride to allow the passage of electrostatic charges through it. And we would actually have to drop in some sort of actually, I've thought about a few different things. I don't know which one would work. I don't even feign to know which one of these would work, where we'd actually have a three-dimensional processing lattice, that would operate. Now, the inputs would have to be in the saline solution. And like I said, there's 2 other alternatives other than salt, where the processing itself would interact with itself holographically. So we're talking about like distilled water and salt, and I forget what the percentage is. What is the percentage? Percentage of salinity of like human blood is what, 6% or something like that? We pass an electrostatic charge through it. If we actually had, I don't know what the algorithm would be, obviously not, I'm not a computer programmer. I would rather do anything in my life other than computer programming. I would think this is about the most horrific, boring, soul-crushing job I could ever think of, so I don't pretend to be a computer programmer. But the only way genuine consciousness would exist is on the same level, and I don't mean flesh and blood and bones. You don't need that. The consciousness that actually exists, and it's not in our mind, it's holographic, that's the locus, just like a radio. Yeah? And water is the only holographic molecule for which life and consciousness is manifest. Now, would we call this thing life? If it was conscious, yes. But we're talking about something as simple as a glass jar with input-output terminals. It had to be a glass jar. A vessel of not a very big size. I mean, human head is, incredibly small, but yet we're able to have dreams and so on and so forth. So for consciousness to spontaneously manifest from a human construct, a processor matrix, yes, a 3-dimensional processor matrix, submerged into this saline solution, something that's on the order of what we have in our bodies, where the water would create holographic information, and it would communicate with itself, because consciousness exists right here. Where does it exist at? Or the oxygen and hydrogen right over here. Right over here is where consciousness is at, right? It's not in the oxygen, it's not in the hydrogen. It is in the incommensurability of everything that is here. It's like, well, what's there? There's nothing there. You have the 2 hydrogen atoms down here and the oxygen atom up here. I'm talking about the actual holography of the perfect incommensurability that exists in the geometry of the molecule itself. Yes, all the magic is not here and here and here, it is right here. And human consciousness is exactly the same. Now, we have a 3-dimensional matrix in our head called a brain, but there's no soul in the body and there's no consciousness in the brain either. It is a holographic matrix through which, by which, and consciousness is able to operate. Now, some people get like in a car accident or whatever, and they end up with messed up brains, so on and so forth. But that has nothing to do with the signal. It just doesn't work properly anymore. We have to dismiss this confusing word, artificial intelligence, confusing compound. We're just talking about consciousness itself, and it would be, by definition, denotation, life. And that could be built. But I know of nobody that has some sort of 3-dimensional processor matrix lattice emerged in water. I don't know anybody that's doing it. Of course, it would actually have to have a saline content for the transmission, the ease of transmission of the signals. You don't know if you know why lightning, for example, when it hits the ocean water, it just it's able to propagate with extremely low loss very readily. I mean, people have been lost their lives by lightning striking, way, way, way far off in the distance, but just because they were sitting in the salt water of the ocean. That's why it's so dangerous, by the way, to be in the ocean when there's a lightning storm. It's way worse than even like a super large swimming pool, which doesn't have any salt in it. But this is how, I hate to use the word artificial intelligence, this is how consciousness would be able to be constructed by human beings. What form that three-dimensional processor matrix would be, I don't know. But it would have to be submersed in a conductive water medium. Conductive water medium, which could have three things as a conductor. One of them sodium chloride. There's two others. Now, the so-called artificial intelligence is possible. But I don't know of anybody on Earth that is attempting to submerge a processor matrix into a saline water solution. I don't know of anybody doing that. There would be not science fiction, not Frankenstein. There would be genuine creation of consciousness. A true 100% original, human-built, sentient, self-aware, self-interactive, non-binary number crunching consciousness. What we've been calling artificial intelligence all these years. But anyway, I spend time thinking about a lot of different stuff that most people don't think about. But anyway, let me know what you think in the comments, and thanks for watching. Goodbye.